The transport shuttle landed on Station Karis 9 with a sound that echoed through the empty docking bay. Ambassador Chen Wei stepped out and looked around at the massive military academy, floating in the darkness of space. The station was huge, with training facilities that could hold thousands of cadets from all across the galaxy. But today, Chen Wei was not here to admire the building. He was here to solve a problem. Inside the main academy hall, Instructor Jacqueth stood before the worst class he had ever taught. His 4 eyes scanned the rows of young cadets, and what he saw made his blood run cold with frustration. The cadets were a mess. They slouched in their seats. They whispered and laughed during his lectures. They broke equipment and blamed each other for the damage. The class was made up of dozens of different species. There were Avrathi cadets with bright feathers that ruffled when they got angry. There were Ketal cadets whose bodies were made of living crystal that glowed different colors based on their moods. There were Vrix cadets with hard shells and multiple arms. And there were Tarkeen cubs covered in soft fur, who were supposed to be natural warriors but acted like spoiled children. The problem was not just that they were undisciplined. The real problem was that they hated each other. The Avrathi refused to work with the Vrix because of some ancient war between their planets. The Ketal thought they were better than everyone else because their species was older. The Tarkeen cubs formed packs and bullied the smaller cadets. Every training exercise ended in arguments and fights. Jacqueth had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in 3 wars and earned medals for bravery. He knew how to train warriors. But this class was different. They did not want to learn. They did not want to be soldiers. Most of them only came to the academy because their families forced them to attend. One morning, Jacqueth walked into the classroom and found chaos. 2 Tarkeen cubs were fighting with an Avrathi cadet over a training weapon. Equipment was scattered across the floor. The other cadets stood around and watched, some cheering, some recording the fight on their devices. Not one of them tried to stop it. Jacqueth roared at them to stop, but they barely looked at him. He had to physically pull the cadets apart. His hands shook with anger. In all his years as an instructor, he had never felt so powerless. These young beings did not respect him. They did not respect the academy. They did not respect anything. That afternoon, Jacqueth received a message from the Academy Board. The board was made up of high-ranking officers from all the major species in the Galactic Union. They wanted to meet with him immediately. Jacqueth knew this was not good news. In the meeting room, 5 board members sat behind a long table. Their faces showed disappointment and anger. Admiral Cortax, a large reptilian officer, spoke first. His voice was cold and direct. "We have received reports about your current class, Instructor Jacqueth. The reports are very bad. Failed exercises, damaged equipment, fights between cadets. This is not acceptable." Jacqueth tried to explain. "Sir, this class is different from any I have taught before. They do not work together. They do not listen. I have tried every training method I know, but nothing works." Admiral Cortax slammed his clawed hand on the table. "We do not want excuses. We want results. If this class cannot be fixed, we will disband the entire cohort. Every cadet will be sent home in disgrace, and you, Instructor, will be removed from your position." The words hit Jacqueth like a physical blow. Being removed from his position would mean the end of his career. Everything he had worked for would be destroyed. But even worse, the cadets would lose their chance to become soldiers. They would carry the shame of failure for the rest of their lives. Just as Admiral Cortax was about to dismiss the meeting, the door opened. Ambassador Chen Wei walked in. He was human, which meant he came from Earth. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Union. They had only made first contact with alien life about 80 years ago. Most species still saw them as primitives who barely understood space travel. Chen Wei bowed politely to the board members. "Forgive my interruption, honored officers. I have heard about the problems with the cadet class. I would like to offer Earth's help." Several board members laughed. One of them, a bird-like Avrathi general, clicked her beak in amusement. "Help from humans? What could your species possibly teach our cadets? Your people have barely left your own solar system. You have no military traditions that we respect." Chen Wei did not seem offended by the insult. He simply smiled. "That is true. We are very new to the galaxy, but humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have learned some things about training soldiers. If you give me permission, I can send for someone who might be able to help." Admiral Cortax looked at the other board members. They whispered among themselves for a moment. Finally, the Admiral turned back to Chen Wei. "Very well, Ambassador. We will allow this. But if your human instructor fails, we will disband the class immediately. You have one chance," Chen Wei nodded. "That is all I ask. I will contact Earth today." 3 days later, Jacques stood in the docking bay again. He was waiting to meet the human instructor who was supposed to save his class. He did not have much hope. What could one human possibly do that he could not? A small personal shuttle arrived and docked. The door opened and a human woman stepped out. She was short, maybe only 5.5 feet tall. She had dark hair pulled back in a tight bun and brown skin that showed she spent time in the sun. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations or medals. She carried one small bag over her shoulder. She walked up to Jacques and extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Sergeant Maya Rodriguez, retired Earth Marine Corps. Ambassador Chen Wei sent for me. You must be Instructor Jacques." Jacques looked down at the small human. He was more than twice her size. His natural armor and weapons made him look like a warrior. She looked like she could barely lift a standard military pack. He tried to hide his disappointment as he shook her hand. "Welcome to Station Karis 9, Sergeant Rodriguez. I hope you understand what you are getting into. These cadets are not like any soldiers you have trained before." Maya smiled. It was not a nervous smile or an arrogant smile. It was calm and confident. "I have read the reports. I know they are difficult, but I have trained difficult recruits before. I think we will figure this out together." Jacques wanted to believe her, but he could not. Still, he had no choice. The board had made their decision. Tomorrow, Maya Rodriguez would meet the cadets for the first time. Jacques only hoped the human would survive the experience. The next morning, Maya Rodriguez stood in front of the cadet barracks. She could hear noise coming from inside. Shouting, laughter, the sound of things being thrown. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Inside, chaos ruled. Cadets from different species were scattered around the large room. Some were still in their sleeping areas. Others were wrestling or arguing. A group of Tarkeen cubs had cornered a small Avrathi cadet and were mocking the way his feathers changed color when he was scared. Nobody was in uniform. Nobody was preparing for morning training. Maya walked to the center of the room. She did not yell. She did not blow a whistle. She simply stood there and waited. After a moment, a few cadets noticed her. They pointed and started laughing. Soon all the cadets were looking at the small human woman standing in their barracks. A large Tarkeen cub named Kirsch walked up to her. He was covered in thick brown fur and stood almost 7 feet tall. His teeth were sharp and designed for hunting. He looked down at Maya with obvious amusement. "What are you supposed to be? Another instructor? You look like you should be in the junior class with the younglings." The other Tarkeen cubs laughed at his joke. Maya looked up at Kirsch without any fear in her eyes. She spoke quietly, so quietly that the cadets had to stop laughing to hear her. "My name is Sergeant Maya Rodriguez. I am here to help with your training. Formation assembly is in 10 minutes. I expect everyone in proper uniform standing in the training yard." Kirsch laughed again. "Or what? What will you do if we don't show up, little human?" Maya did not answer. She simply turned and walked out of the barracks. Behind her, the cadets exploded into laughter and jokes. They thought she was weak. They thought she would be easy to break. 10 minutes later, Maya stood alone in the training yard. The sun was rising over the station, casting long shadows across the empty space. She waited. After 5 more minutes, a few cadets wandered out. They were not in proper uniform. They moved slowly, like they had all the time in the world. They stood in messy groups, not in formation. More cadets arrived over the next 20 minutes. By the time everyone was present, Maya had been standing in the same spot for 35 minutes. The cadets talked among themselves. They ignored her. Finally, Kirsch spoke up. "We are here, human. What do you want us to do? Run until we are tired? Do exercises until we are bored? That is what Instructor Jacques always makes us do." Maya walked along the line of cadets. She looked at each one carefully. She did not yell. She did not insult them. She simply observed. When she finished, she spoke in that same quiet voice. "I notice that some of you are not in proper uniform. I notice that you arrived 25 minutes late to formation. I also notice that you are not standing in organized lines. These are problems, but we will work on them. Today we are going on a march, full gear. 10 miles, the cadets groaned. An Avrathi cadet named Prill spoke up. His blue feathers ruffled with annoyance. 10 miles? That is too far. We are not ready for that kind of march. Maya looked at him. Then we will go slower. But we will finish. Go get your gear. We leave in 15 minutes. The march was a disaster. The cadets complained every step of the way. Some of them deliberately walked slow to make the group fall behind. Others tried to take shortcuts. A few simply sat down and refused to move. Maya did not yell at them. She did not threaten them. She just kept walking, maintaining a steady pace. When a cadet fell too far behind, she waited for them to catch up. About 3 miles into the march, Prill, the Avrathi cadet, stumbled and fell. His gear scattered across the ground. He was small for his species, and the heavy pack was clearly too much for him. Before he could get up, Kirsch walked past him and deliberately kicked some of his gear further away. "Oops," Kirsch said with a mean smile. "Should be more careful, little bird." Maya stopped walking. She turned around and looked at what had happened. The other cadet stopped too, watching to see what the human would do. Would she yell at Kirsch? Would she punish Prill for being clumsy? Maya walked over to Kirsch. She looked up at the big Tarkeen cub. "Cadet Kirsch, I saw what you did. You deliberately kicked Cadet Prill's equipment. That was not an accident." Kirsch shrugged his massive shoulders. "So what? He should be stronger. This is military training, not a nursery." Maya nodded slowly. "You are right. This is military training. In the military, soldiers help each other. They do not sabotage their squad mates. So here is what will happen. You will carry your gear and Cadet Prill's gear for the rest of the march." Kirsch laughed. "You cannot make me do that." Maya did not argue with him. She simply started walking again. After a moment, the rest of the cadets followed her. Kirsch stood there, confused. He looked at his fellow Tarkeen cubs, expecting them to stay with him. But they followed Maya too. Nobody wanted to be left behind alone. Finally, Kirsch cursed under his breath. He picked up both packs and hurried to catch up with the group. The extra weight made him struggle. His breathing became heavy. But Maya did not slow down. She maintained the same steady pace she had kept from the beginning. By the time they finished the march, it was late afternoon. Every cadet was exhausted. Kirsch looked like he might collapse. His fur was soaked with sweat. But he had carried both packs the entire way. When they finally reached the barracks, he dropped the packs on the ground and glared at Maya with hate in his eyes. Maya looked at him calmly. "Tomorrow we march again. Same distance. If anyone sabotages a squad mate, they will carry that squad mate's gear too. Understood?" Nobody answered. They just stared at her. This human was different from Instructor Jacqueth. She did not yell. She did not threaten. She just made them face the consequences of their actions. It was frustrating because there was nothing to argue against. Over the next few weeks, the cadets tried everything to break Maya or make her quit. They sabotaged equipment during exercises. They pretended not to understand her orders. They showed up late or not at all. But Maya never lost her temper. She never shouted at them. Instead, she watched. She learned their names. She learned which species needed more water during training. She learned which cadets had old injuries that made certain exercises difficult. When a Vrix cadet named Zixtar deliberately broke a training weapon, Maya did not punish him. She simply gave him extra maintenance duty cleaning all the weapons. When a group of Kedal cadets refused to participate in a team exercise, Maya split them up and assigned each one to work with a different species. When cadets arrived late to formation, Maya made everyone wait for them without complaint, but she also extended training by the exact amount of time they had wasted. The punishments were not cruel. They were not mean. They were just logical consequences. Slowly, the cadets began to realize that Maya was not trying to break them. She was not trying to prove she was tougher than them. She was simply holding them accountable. One evening, about 6 weeks after Maya arrived, Prill the Avrathi was struggling with his equipment in the barracks. His small hands were not designed to work with the standard military clasps. He was getting frustrated and his feathers were turning orange with embarrassment. Maya walked over to him. She did not take the equipment away and do it for him. Instead, she knelt down next to him and showed him a different way to hold the clasps that worked better with his hand structure. She was patient. She did not make him feel stupid. She just helped him learn. Kirsch watched from across the barracks. He had been avoiding Maya since the March incident. But something about the way she helped Prill made him think. She could have used Prill's weakness as an excuse to mock him or remove him from training, but instead she helped him get stronger. That night, for the first time since Maya arrived, none of the cadets sabotaged equipment or started fights. They went to sleep quietly. It was a small change, but it was a change. Maya noticed it, but she did not comment on it. She simply turned off the lights and said goodnight to them all. From his office window, Instructor Jacques watched the barracks. He had expected the human to fail by now. He had expected the cadets to break her spirit and force her to quit. But somehow she was still there, and even more surprising, the cadets seemed slightly less chaotic than before, just slightly. But it was something. Jacques did not know if Maya would succeed. But for the first time in months, he felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this human knew something he did not. 3 months had passed since Maya arrived at the academy. The cadets were better than before, but they were still not good enough. They followed orders most of the time, but they did not work together as a real unit. The different species still kept to themselves. The Tarkine cubs stayed with other Tarkine. The Avrathi stayed with their own kind. The ancient hatreds and rivalries were still there, just hidden under the surface. Then Instructor Jacques called Maya to his office. His face was grim. The Academy Board has ordered a formal inspection in 2 days. They want to see if the cadets have improved. If they fail this inspection, the board will disband the entire class. Maya felt a weight settle in her chest. 2 days was not much time. Are the cadets ready for a formal inspection? Jacques looked out his window at the training yard. Honestly, I do not know. They are better than they were. But I have seen formal inspections break classes that were much more prepared than this one. Maya nodded. Then we will prepare them the best we can. We still have 2 days. That evening, Maya gathered all the cadets in the training yard. She explained about the inspection. She told them what would be tested. Equipment maintenance, formation drill, physical fitness, knowledge of military protocols. The cadets listened quietly. For once, they seemed to understand that this was serious. We will spend the next 2 days preparing, Maya said. I know you can do this. You have all worked hard over these past months. Now we need to show the board what you have learned. The cadets nodded and went back to their barracks. They seemed determined. They seemed ready. But Maya had a bad feeling in her gut. Something felt wrong. She was right to worry. That night, everything fell apart. It started with an argument between Kirsch and Zixtar, the Vrix cadet. They were assigned to the same inspection team, and neither wanted to work with the other. The argument got louder. Soon other cadets joined in, taking sides based on their species. Old grudges came flooding back. Within an hour, the barracks was in chaos. Someone sabotaged the equipment that was supposed to be inspected. Another cadet hid someone else's uniform. The Ketal cadets announced they would not participate in any team exercises with the Tarkine. The Avrathi said they would rather fail than stand next to the Vrix. Maya tried to restore order, but for the first time since she arrived, the cadets would not listen to her. They were too angry, too scared, too convinced that working together was impossible. By midnight, Maya sat alone in the training yard. She felt like a failure. She had tried everything she knew. She had been patient. She had been firm. She had taught them skills and held them accountable. But it was not enough. The deep divisions between the species were too strong. She heard footsteps behind her. Prill, the small Avrathi cadet, walked up and sat down nearby. His feathers were dim and gray, which meant he was sad. Sergeant Rodriguez, we are going to fail tomorrow, aren't we? Maya looked at him. I don't know, Cadet Prill, that depends on all of you. Prill was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, on Earth, do different groups of humans ever hate each other, like we hate the other species? Maya let out a sad laugh. Oh yes, humans have fought wars against each other for thousands of years. Wars over land, wars over religion, wars over skin color and language and which side of a border you were born on. We have hated each other for the stupidest reasons you can imagine. Then how did you ever work together? Prill asked. How did humans become united enough to join the Galactic Union? Maya thought about the question. Slowly, she began to tell Prill a story. It was a story about Earth's first war after making contact with aliens. It was a story about a military unit that included soldiers from nations that had been enemies for generations. As Maya talked, other cadets started to appear. One by one, they came out of the barracks and sat down in the training yard. They listened. Maya told them about a Japanese soldier and an American soldier who had to work together, even though their grandparents had fought against each other in World War II. She told them about a Pakistani medic who saved the life of an Indian officer, even though their countries had fought 3 wars. She told them about the moment when Earth faced a real external threat, and suddenly all the old hatred seemed small and stupid. She told them about enemies who became brothers, about soldiers who died protecting people they had been taught to hate. One of the cadets, a kettle named Velshara, whose body glowed a soft blue, asked a question. But how did they learn to trust each other? How did they get past all the history? Maya looked around at all the young faces watching her. They did not get past the history. They carried it with them. But they learned something more important than forgetting the past. They learned that the person standing next to you in battle is not your enemy. Your enemy is the thing you are fighting together. Kirsch spoke up from the back of the group. His voice was not mocking for once. It was serious. But we are not in battle. We are just in training. What are we fighting together? Maya looked directly at him. Tomorrow you will be inspected by officers who expect you to fail. They think you are too divided to work together. They think your hatred for each other is stronger than your ability to be soldiers. If you go into that inspection divided, they will be right. You will fail. Every single one of you will be sent home in disgrace. She stood up and looked at all of them. But if you go into that inspection as a unit, as one squad that supports each other no matter what species you are, then you might have a chance. Not a guarantee, just a chance. Zixtar, the Vrix cadet, clicked his mandibles nervously. How do we do that? We have tried to work together. It never works. We always end up fighting. Maya walked among them. You fight because you are focused on your differences. You see a Tarkeen and think about the war your species fought 200 years ago. You see an Avrathi and remember some insult from last week. You see someone different and assume they are your enemy. She stopped walking and looked at them all. But I have been watching you for 3 months. I have seen Kirsch carry equipment for Prill even though he did not want to. I have seen Velshara help Zixtar with his studies. I have seen all of you push through hard training together. You already know how to work together. You just don't believe it yet. Prill stood up. His feathers were starting to show more color. What do we need to do, Sergeant? Maya smiled at him. First, you need to fix the equipment that was sabotaged. Second, you need to help each other prepare. Not just help the cadets from your own species. Help everyone. Third, you need to make a choice. You can go into that inspection as a collection of individuals who happen to be standing in the same place, or you can go in as a unit. She looked each of them in the eye. Discipline is not about following orders blindly. It is about trust. Tomorrow, when you stand for inspection, you will not be standing tall for the instructors. You will be standing tall for each other, because you know the cadet next to you has your back no matter what species they are. The training yard was silent. Then slowly Kirsch stood up. He walked over to Zixtar and extended his large paw. I'm sorry I fought with you tonight. Will you help me repair the equipment I damaged? Zixtar stared at the extended paw for a long moment. His species and the Tarkeen had been enemies for generations. But finally he reached out with one of his multiple arms and gripped Kirsch's paw. I will help you. And you will help me prepare my uniform. One by one, the other cadets stood up. They started pairing off not by species but by what needed to be done. They went back to the barracks together and started working. Maya watched them go. She did not know if it would be enough. But for the first time, they were not working together because she told them to. They were working together because they chose to. She stayed in the training yard a while longer, looking up at the stars visible through the station windows. Tomorrow would tell if her words had made a difference. Tomorrow would tell if these young beings from across the galaxy could become what she knew they could be. Not just soldiers, but a real unit, a real squad, a family. The morning of the inspection arrived cold and bright. Maya stood in the training yard before dawn, watching the sun rise over Station Karis 9. She could hear the cadets moving around in the barracks. They had stayed up most of the night helping each other prepare. She did not know if it would be enough, but she was proud of them for trying. The doors to the academy hall opened. The entire faculty began to arrive. Instructors from every department, academy administrators, security officers. They gathered along the edges of the training yard, forming a wall of witnesses. Among them was Admiral Cortax and the other members of the academy board. They stood at the front, their faces showing no emotion. Instructor Jacques emerged from his office in full dress uniform. His medals gleamed in the morning light. He walked to the center of the yard where Maya stood. He looked at her for a long moment. "Are they ready?" Maya took a breath. "We will find out." At exactly 600 hours, the barracks doors opened. The cadets emerged in perfect formation. They were in proper uniform. Every piece of equipment was clean and properly maintained. They marched in step to the training yard and formed up in precise lines. Not by species, but by squad assignments. Tarky next to Avrathi, Kettle next to Vrix. Jacquet's eyes widened slightly. He had never seen this class look so organized. He walked to the front of the formation and called them to attention. The cadets snapped to attention as one. The movement was sharp and unified. Jacques began the inspection. He walked down the line slowly, examining each cadet. He checked their uniforms for any flaw. He looked at their equipment. He asked them questions about military protocols. The cadets answered correctly. Their voices were clear and confident. Maya watched from the side. She could see the concentration on the cadets' faces. She could also see something else. When Jacques questioned one cadet harshly, the cadets on either side stood a little straighter, offering silent support. When he pointed out a minor flaw in someone's equipment, the whole line seemed to share the correction. But Jacques was not satisfied with finding minor flaws. He had convinced himself this inspection would fail. He wanted to prove that this class was beyond saving. When he reached Velshara, the Ketal cadet, he stopped. "Cadet Velshara," Jacques said loudly, "tell me the proper procedure for establishing a defensive perimeter in hostile territory." Velshara's crystal body flickered nervously, but her voice remained steady. "Sir, the procedure requires a minimum of 4 sentries positioned at cardinal points with overlapping fields of observation. Communication protocols must be established with redundant systems. Rotation schedules should allow for adequate rest while maintaining constant vigilance." Jacques nodded curtly. Acceptable. He moved on. He tried several more times to catch cadets with difficult questions or by finding problems with their equipment. But every time the cadets were prepared, every answer was correct. Every piece of gear was properly maintained. Finally, Jacques reached Kirsch. The big Tarkine cub had been Maya's biggest problem when she first arrived. Jacques remembered the fights, the insubordination, the deliberate disruptions. He decided to push hard. "Cadet Kirsch," Jacques said coldly, "I remember you. You were the worst cadet in this entire class. You fought with your squad mates. You broke equipment. You showed no respect for authority. Why should I believe you have changed?" The question was not really about military knowledge. It was personal. It was meant to provoke. The other instructors shifted uncomfortably. This kind of questioning was not part of a normal inspection. Kirsch stood perfectly still. His eyes met Jacques without flinching. "You are right, sir. I was the worst cadet. I did all those things you said. But I learned something important over the past 3 months." "And what did you learn?" Jacques demanded. Kirsch's voice was clear and strong. "I learned what it means to serve something greater than myself, sir. I learned that being strong does not mean standing alone. It means standing together with your squad. I learned that from Sergeant Rodriguez." As Kirsch spoke, something remarkable happened. Every cadet in the formation moved. Not a lot. Just a half step. They moved closer to each other. Closer to Kirsch. It was instinctive. It was protective. It said without words that if Jacques wanted to tear down one of them, he would have to go through all of them. Jacques saw the movement. He felt the shift in the formation. For the first time in the inspection, he showed emotion. His eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly in surprise. These cadets, who had spent months hating each other, were now defending each other. Not because they were ordered to, but because they wanted to. Jacques stepped back from Kirsch. He looked at the entire formation again. His frustration boiled over. He turned and looked directly at Maya, standing quietly at the side of the yard. Who taught them discipline? The question exploded across the training yard. It was not really a question. It was an accusation. It was confusion. It was disbelief. Jacques had tried for months to break these cadets into shape. He had yelled at them. He had punished them. He had used every technique he knew from 40 years of military service. And it had not worked. But this small human woman had done something in 3 months that he could not do. and he did not understand how. He did not understand what method she had used. What secret she possessed, Maya did not answer. She did not need to, because the answer came from the cadets themselves. As one movement, every single cadet in the formation turned their head toward Maya. Then they moved. A half step, just like they had moved toward Kirsch. But this time they moved toward Maya. Every species, every cadet, they moved closer to the human who had taught them what it really meant to be a unit. And as they moved, they stood taller. Not because they were afraid of Jacqueth, not because they were trying to impress the board, but because they were standing next to someone who believed in them, someone who had never given up on them, someone who had shown them that strength comes from unity. The answer was wordless. The answer was absolute. The answer was written in every straight spine, every level gaze, every unified breath of the formation. She did. The training yard was silent. All the instructors stared. The board members looked at each other in shock. Even Jacqueth seemed frozen, unable to process what he was seeing. Finally, Admiral Kordak stepped forward. He walked slowly around the formation, looking at each cadet carefully. He saw Tarkeen Cub standing shoulder to shoulder with Avrathi. He saw Ketal and Vrix maintaining formation together. He saw species that had been enemies for centuries working as a single unit. He stopped in front of Maya. She snapped to attention and saluted. The Admiral returned her salute slowly. "Sergeant Rodriguez," the Admiral said quietly, "what did you do that we could not?" Maya met his eyes. "With respect, sir, I did not do anything special. I simply showed them that discipline does not come from fear. It comes from trust. They taught themselves. I just helped them see what they were capable of." The Admiral looked back at the formation. The cadets still stood tall, still unified. He turned to the other board members. "This inspection is complete. These cadets pass with honors." A cheer started to rise from the cadets, but they caught themselves. They remained at attention. They remained professional. But Maya could see the joy in their eyes, the pride, the relief. Jacqueth dismissed the formation. As the cadets broke ranks, they did not separate by species like they used to. They gathered together, congratulating each other. Kirsch picked up Prill and spun him around, making the little Avrathi's feathers flash every color of happiness. Velshar's crystal body glowed so bright with joy that it lit up the entire yard. Maya watched them celebrate. She felt a hand on her shoulder. Jacqueth stood beside her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly he spoke. "I tried to make them fear failure. You taught them to trust each other. That was the difference." "I see that now." Maya looked up at him. "They are good cadets, Instructor. They just needed someone to believe in them." Jacqueth nodded slowly. Then for the first time he smiled. "Thank you, Sergeant Rodriguez. You have taught me something as well." The sun rose higher over Station Karis 9. The inspection was over, but something much more important had begun. A new understanding, a new way of seeing what it meant to train soldiers, and a new respect for the small human woman, who had shown them all that the strongest weapon in the galaxy was not force, it was unity. 3 weeks after the inspection, the cadets gathered in the Academy Hall for their graduation ceremony. They wore their formal uniforms with pride. Families had come from across the galaxy to watch their children become soldiers. The hall was filled with beings of every species, all there to witness something that many had thought impossible. Admiral Kordak stood at the podium to give the graduation speech. His voice carried across the hall. "Today we celebrate a class that has achieved something extraordinary. They came to this academy as individuals from many worlds. They came with old hatreds and ancient rivalries. Many of us believed they would fail, but they proved us wrong." He paused and looked directly at the graduating cadets. "You did not succeed because you were forced to work together. You succeeded because you chose to trust each other. That choice makes you more than just soldiers. It makes you a family, and it makes me proud to have witnessed your transformation." The graduates received their assignments after the ceremony. They were all being sent to the same ship, a joint species frigate called the Unified Dawn. It was a new vessel designed to show what the Galactic Union could accomplish when different species worked together. The cadets could not have been more excited, but they had one request. They approached Admiral Kordak and asked if Sergeant Rodriguez could be assigned to their ship as an advisor. The Admiral smiled and told them the request had already been approved. Maya would be joining them. On the day of departure, Maya stood in the docking bay watching the cadets load their gear onto the transport shuttle. She saw Kirsch helping Prill with a heavy equipment case. She saw Velshara and Zixtar going over their assignments together, planning how to work efficiently as a team. She saw beings from species that had fought wars for centuries treating each other like brothers and sisters. Instructor Jacques walked up beside her. He had come to see the graduates off. "You should be proud, Sergeant. You have changed their lives." Maya shook her head gently. "They changed their own lives, Instructor. I just showed them it was possible. The real work was theirs." Jacques watched the cadets for a moment. Then he said something that surprised Maya. "The Academy Board has asked me to speak with you. They want to know if you would be willing to train our instructors, to teach them your methods. We want human advisors for every cohort." Maya looked at him in surprise. "Every cohort? That is a lot of instructors to train." Jacques nodded. "After what we saw with your class, every academy in the Galactic Union wants to learn from Earth. Your species has something we forgot. The ability to unite despite differences. The ability to build trust across barriers. We need that knowledge." Maya thought about all the wars humans had fought, all the hatred and division that still existed on Earth. Her species was far from perfect. But maybe that was exactly why they understood unity so well, because they knew how hard it was to achieve, because they knew what happened when it was lost. "I will help however I can," Maya said, "but I need to join my cadets first. They still need guidance." Jacques smiled. "Of course, the Unified Dawn will be your base. When you return from your first mission, we will begin the instructor training program." Ambassador Chen Wei appeared from across the docking bay. He had come to see Maya off as well. He approached with a proud smile. "Sergeant Rodriguez, you have done Earth proud. When I sent for you, I hoped you could help a few cadets graduate. I never imagined you would change the entire academy system." Maya felt embarrassed by the praise. "I just did my job, Ambassador." Chen Wei shook his head. "No, Sergeant. You did much more than that. Do you know what the other species used to call us? The primitives. The newcomers. The species that barely understood the galaxy. But now they are asking us for help. They are coming to Earth to learn from us. You have changed how the entire Galactic Union sees humanity." Maya looked across the docking bay at her cadets. They were laughing together, supporting each other, moving as one unit despite coming from dozens of different worlds. That was the real change. Not Earth's reputation, but the knowledge that beings from anywhere could learn to work together if they were given the right guidance. The transport shuttle was ready to depart. The cadets called for Maya to join them. She said goodbye to Jacques and Chen Wei, then walked across the bay. As she approached, all the cadets stood at attention and saluted her. Not because regulations required it, but because they wanted to show respect. Maya returned the salute. Then Kirsch grinned and broke formation to give her a careful hug. His species was much stronger than humans, so he was very gentle. Soon all the other cadets gathered around. Different species, different sizes, different abilities, but one family. They boarded the shuttle together. As it lifted off from Station Karis 9, Maya looked back at the academy through the window. She thought about all the other cohorts that would come after this one, all the cadets who would learn that their differences made them stronger, not weaker, all the instructors who would learn that discipline came from trust, not fear. The galaxy was a big place. It was full of species that had fought wars and held grudges for thousands of years, but maybe, just maybe, it could also be a place where old enemies became new friends, where beings from across the stars learned to stand together. Back on the station, other instructors were already gathering to watch recordings of Maya's training methods. Admiral Cortex had ordered every session documented. Now instructors from across the galaxy would study what the human had done. They would learn that the most powerful weapon was not force or fear. It was the simple act of believing in someone. In the months that followed, the Unified Dawn and its crew earned a reputation as one of the most effective units in the galactic fleet. When they encountered dangerous situations, they worked together with a unity that amazed other ships. When they faced challenges, they supported each other without hesitation. Other crews started to notice. Other commanders started to ask questions. What made that crew so special? What was their secret? The answer was always the same. They learned from a human. They learned what it means to stand tall for each other. One evening, 6 months after graduation, the crew of the Unified Dawn gathered for a meal. It was a tradition they had started. Once a week, they would share food from their different cultures. Kirsch brought meat from his homeworld. Prill brought fruit that glowed in the dark. Felshura created crystalline sculptures as decorations. Zixtar told jokes that made everyone laugh, even though his species' humor was very strange. Maya sat among them, not as an instructor, but as part of the crew. She watched them interact. She saw how far they had come from the angry, divided cadets she had first met. She felt proud, not because she had changed them, but because they had been brave enough to change themselves. Prill raised his cup in a toast. To Sergeant Rodriguez, to the human who taught us that we are stronger together than apart. The others raised their cups and echoed the toast. Maya raised hers as well, but she added something. To all of you, you are the ones who chose to trust. You are the ones who chose to stand together. I am honored to serve with you. As they drank and celebrated, none of them knew that their story was already spreading across the galaxy. Academy instructors were implementing new training programs based on Maya's methods. Station commanders were requesting human advisors. Young cadets from hundreds of worlds were hearing about the class that overcame centuries of hatred to become a true unit. The Galactic Union was changing, slowly, carefully, but changing nonetheless. And it was changing because one small human woman had shown them something they had forgotten. That discipline was not about breaking individuals down. It was about building them up together. Years later, when historians wrote about this period, they would call it the Great Unity. They would talk about how the Galactic Union transformed from a loose alliance into a true federation. They would discuss the political changes and the military reforms and the new treaties, but the soldiers who lived through it knew the truth. The change did not start with politicians or admirals. It started in a training yard on Station Karis 9. It started with a class of difficult cadets and a retired Marine sergeant who believed in them. It started with the simple question that echoed across the galaxy. Who taught them discipline? The answer was not just one human. The answer was the lesson that human taught. That strength does not come from standing alone. It comes from standing together. That discipline is not forced from outside. It is chosen from within. That the greatest power in the universe is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to unite. And every time a new class of cadets stood taller beside their human instructor, that lesson spread a little further. That truth grew a little stronger. That hope for unity became a little more real. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started because one woman refused to give up on a group of cubs that everyone else had abandoned, because she saw what they could not yet see in themselves, that they were not enemies forced to work together. They were a family waiting to be born,